show up with a note signed by somebody. Dale, load it up. Oh, you want me to turn it on?
Yes, please.
You know, I told him I didn't want an electric butt plug for this. One, two, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks.
Thank you.
7, 8, lay them straight. 9, 10, do it again. Yeah?
We're good, thanks.
God help.
Good afternoon. Hey, it works. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Very good. Very
You
good.
ready, Tom?
I'm Tom Traflett. I'm the Vice President of Avatar. And I'm dropping my stuff already, but that's okay. Thank you all, first of all, very much for coming here on this special afternoon. It's my privilege to introduce our speaker today, so I'm going to read you a little bit of his bio. Guy Baldwin, a California licensed psychotherapist in private practice for 41 years, has been an active participant in and a thoughtful observer and commentator on the American leather scene since the late 1960s. For nearly 4 decades, Baldwin has crisscrossed the continent teaching audiences of erotic adventures how to have less trouble doing and more fun exploring outside of the box sexualities. An acclaimed speaker, he has delivered keynote addresses at lifestyle events too numerous to list here. In 1989, judges chose Baldwin to serve as the 11th International Mr. Leather. Weeks earlier, judges made him the second Mr. National Leather Association. He is the only man to have held both titles concurrently. And if you collect Drummer magazine, there's a great picture of him on one of the covers. Mark Thompson, a senior editor at The Advocate, included Baldwin and 15 others writers, healers, teachers, and visionaries in his 1994 book, Gay Soul. Guy has published 3 books and authored numerous essays in a wide array of lifestyle publications. Now in its 4th printing and recently made available as an ebook, Slavecraft has long been required reading for those who feel turbocharged by the voluntary inclusion of authority in their erotic and romantic relationships. In 2000, the Leather Archives and Museum named Guy a Centurion, thereby acknowledging him as one of the 20 most important contributors to the leather lifestyle in the 20th century. In 2008, the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force awarded him the Leather Leadership Award. And then in 2009, he was the very first recipient of the Master Slave Heritage Award. Mr. Baldwin's lifetime of service has been marked by many accolades over the years, including the Pantheon of Leather Lifetime Achievement Award, the Tom of Finland Lifetime Achievement Award, and Guy was even immortalized in a drawing by Tom himself. If you remember the first ad that you saw for this, There's a little drawing in there. That was Tom of Finland of this gentleman.
Back when the earth was cooling.
With Guy Baldwin, you never know precisely what you're going to get, and that will play out today as well. But one thing is for sure, as a lifelong activist, a pioneer of radical sexuality, and a seeker of clarity, he never fails to challenge listeners by fearlessly speaking truth exactly as he has discovered it. Gentlemen, Guy Baldwin.
Tom. Sit here with me a minute, or stand here with me a minute. In 1987, there was a gay and lesbian march on Washington for gay and lesbian rights. I was there, and that morning I decided that I was going to make a sign to carry in the march. So I gathered some materials from a trash can. I think I was race-banded slave at that time, if memory serves. And I put together a sign. It was photographed. The sign said, "Diversity is American." The Washington Blade, which was a big gay newspaper in Washington, D.C., took this photograph, and it made its way around the world, I guess. It's got cobwebs. This photograph has been with me for a long time, and I would like to give it to you, Tom, to thank you for all the work that you do for this organization, for all the work that it took to put this together.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much. I've discovered that it's a lot easier to give things away when you're alive than it is to expect your executors to do it after you're not. So I think that you'll be a great curator for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Gentlemen, let's put this
Well, thank you for coming.
It's October, yeah, coming. It's October. Nobody's coming.
Oh, Guy, you know what?
No, what?
I missed a part. Am I back on? Am I back on, Jim? Thank you. I got so fatigued with this unexpected honor. I forgot to mention our format for this afternoon. So, here's how this is going to work. Guy's going to talk for about an hour with the presentation that he has. We're going to take a short break after that. Then when we come back, we have a microphone up here for questions about what you have just seen. We're going to limit our questioning to the topic discussed for this first part. We'll come back. You can line up there for questions, use the mic so that everyone can hear you. And then we'll take another break. And after that, we'll come back for an open Q&A where you can ask all the questions that you want. So I'll time us and I'll interject when it's time for a little break, and that's how we'll work it today. So if you have questions while he's presenting, I encourage you to get your phone, get your notes, write it down, write your questions or type them in your phone, and then you'll be able to remember them when it's time to do that. And we also have a guest book in the back corner, which we would love to have all of you sign before you leave today, because it's a special occasion. And this club does a lot of stuff. And like next Wednesday, we're doing our swap meet. But we'll talk more about that later. So that's our format. And now I present Guy Baldwin.
I want to start by sharing with you some biases that I have about human sexuality, because you're entitled to know what they are. First bias, it is my conviction, it is a thing I have learned. Anything that exists in nature that's powerful can create in exactly equal proportion to which it can destroy. You think about wind, powerful, creative, destructive. Water, powerful, creative, destructive. Nuclear energy exists in nature, powerful, creative, destructive. Sexuality, powerful, creative, destructive. Love, powerful, creative, destructive. Politics, powerful, creative, destructive. Because I am a survivor of the human potential movement, I believe that sexuality in all of its manifestations needs to add to who a person is and not subtract or diminish them in any way. Because if it doesn't do that, then it's being deployed for the forces of destruction. And I don't know. I think the gift of humanity is that we are charged with leaving more behind us than less. Another bias, all too often, men and women, gay, straight, whatever their orientations, seem to confuse being aggressive with being confident. There are men who want to be seen as confident, who behave aggressively. Aggression and confidence are not the same thing. And we should all give some serious thought, I believe, to thinking about what the real nature of confidence is. I've been conducting a study of kinky gay porn for the last 3 years. I was never really interested in porn before then, but I certainly have become so. And in some ways, I think the pornography that we're surrounded by is and can be a very interesting barometer about changes in our moral center, I guess. I don't know. There was a time, for example, when slapping was unheard of in gay male porn. And now it's pretty common. Typically, men do not appreciate being slapped in general. So that's a bias of mine. I have about 20 others, but the one I'll mention next. Almost everything that you've heard or read or watched concerning training is bullshit. Newcomers to radical sexuality will often say, "Oh, I'm looking for somebody to train me to be this, that, or the other." But the truth of the matter is, the great kept secret is that men who prefer to be dominant don't really know a damn thing about submission. They don't. And the reason they don't is they don't enjoy it. So if you don't enjoy submission, why would you know anything about it? But the myth persists. Oh, I'm looking for a man, a top, a dominant, a master, to train me to be a boy. No. If you want to learn how to be a boy and a sub, learn it from other subs who know about it, who have something useful to teach you about it. Most dominants don't know a damn thing about submission. And if you talk to them privately, oh yeah, and I'm a guy that they come and they pay money to talk to me privately, so I know what goes on in their heads, behind their eyes, when they come and talk to me about it. Most dominants feel like frauds when somebody says, oh, train me. Well, okay. So what happens is that the top, the dominant, the sadist, the master, goes through what he thinks the motions of training are, but it doesn't really train. It doesn't really introduce. Chefs do not learn how to cook from the people in the restaurant. They learn how to cook from other chefs. Race car drivers do not learn how to drive a race car from the people in the stands. They learn from other race car drivers. Wrestlers do not learn how to wrestle from coaches as much as they learn from other wrestlers. Often coaches were wrestlers and molesters, but no. I'm sorry I got sidetracked there for a minute. So, this is not the first time I've said that in public. And typically dominants come to me and say, thank God you pointed that truth out. I am so relieved I no longer have to pretend like I know how to train boys. So, you're welcome, dominant men. You're welcome, subs. Because all that stuff that you thought was training that you were getting was just, being used. But it wasn't real training. So that's another bias. So how do we get more out of our BDSM scenes? What, for example, constitutes success in a scene? Well, guess what? That depends on what kind of a scene you're doing. And how many different kinds of scenes do we do? Well, let's start with punishment. We do punishment scenes, and we do torture scenes. What's the difference between a punishment scene and a torture scene? Well, a torture scene doesn't require any pretext of wrongdoing. When I was 18, trying to get the attention of a well-known top in Denver, where I lived at the time, it was hard for me to get anybody's attention because none of the people who knew what they were doing in Denver at that time figured that they could possibly have any fun with an 18-year-old. Because, what could I know? I had no experience, they thought. I did have a little, but anyway, Ed finally decided he was going to try me out. So he took me up into his cabin in the mountains. 2.5 hours we drove outside of Denver. God, it was crazy. You could have set a stick of dynamite off in his place and nobody would have heard it. Anyway, after 3 days of playing with me, he ordered me to make breakfast. Now, no electricity, no gas, nothing but a campfire. But I had been a Boy Scout, thank you very much, and I knew how to cook outdoors. And I was very handy with cooking and eggs, and I knew how to crack eggs with one hand. What would you like for breakfast, sir? Well, I'd like some eggs and bacon. It's there in the thing. Fire's going, make me some food. So, very flashy, I took 3 eggs, cracked them into the skillet. Boom, boom, 1, 2, 3. And I heard, not those 3. Inviting me to a punishment scene with that. So I took the spatula, and into the fire the eggs went, and I went and presented him with the carton of eggs, and he pointed out the eggs he wanted me to cook for him. If I'm into torture scenes, if I want to get the shit beat out of me, and I come across a dominant guy who turns me on, and he asks me a question like, have you been a good boy or a bad boy? I don't get that because it just goes over my head. I don't care what the answer is. Just beat me, would you please? Unless the players are on the same page in terms of what kind of a scene they want, then all the communications go screwy. Other kinds of scenes. We do rites of passage scenes. We do initiation scenes. We do graduation scenes. We do experimental scenes. I remember there used to be a guy that I played with here. We'd go out into the desert wearing boots, a cup, eye protection. We'd draw a big circle in the sand. Each of us had a 6-foot bullwhip, and the idea was to drive the other one out of the circle. And we just cut the hell out of each other. And it took, a couple hours for one of us to finally be driven out of the circle. Master-slave scenes where there's a big authority differential. Another kind of scene that we do. We do humiliation scenes, hopefully very carefully. We do leather sex scenes, guys who like to have rough sex wearing leather. That's a thing that we do. We do endurance scenes. Yeah? Can you handle 100 lashes? I'll bet you can. If I'm giving them to you, I'll make sure that you can. If he's giving them to you, he'll make sure that you can't. We do hierarchy scenes. And more different kinds of ways that we connect with one another. And the reason why that's useful to think about is that unless people are on the same page with the stuff that works for them, they're going to misfire. By now, everybody in this room has had some magical experiences in kink. And my guess is you can't really be certain about what made them magical. Most of the time when magic happens for us, it's an accident. It's like, whoa, I did that and I didn't. I've had 16 different scenes, but that scene, that one took me someplace I had always wanted to go, but never knew how to get there. Well, I'm here today to tell you about some of the ways that you can accomplish a better alignment for that sort of thing. Usually our encounters with one another begin with cruising. Cruising is a solo activity. It's when we sort of put our feelers out there in the world to see if there's any response. Any responses from people who interest us. When we do get a response, then it becomes flirting, so that now we have information going in two directions. If the flirting continues well, eventually there's a thing that I've come to call a cue. Race Bannon and I figured this model out many, many years ago when I was slaving for him. Because we talked well together and we were interested in finding out if there are ways to get more out of this. At some level, you are all captains of your own erotic Starship Enterprise. If you wish, you can park it in Earth orbit for the rest of your life and never get tired of the beautiful views of this extraordinary planet that we are blessed with. If you wish, you can engage impulse engines and visit the wonders of our local solar system. But for those of you who are ready, willing, and able, you can engage warp drive and visit destinations that are quite literally beyond time and space. But navigating at light speed requires a different tool set, doesn't it? So a cue can be a word or words. It can be movement. It can be sound. Those are come and get me noises, aren't they? Mister, my back itches something crazy. Do you have anything you could scratch it with for me? The purpose of a cue is to invite stimulation. If the cue is well received, if it comes from the same paradigm that you're interested in, there's going to be some stimulation coming your way. Now, when that happens, and it doesn't matter whether it's a whip stroke or whether it's needles or whether it's a verbal scene and somebody says something to you that slaps you in the brain, like, I'm going to make you cry and kiss the tears away. That's a quote. And when he said that to me, the world changed. Tectonic plates shifted inside of me. He had just walked up to me. I was on a St. Andrew's cross, and he walked up to me and he said, I'm going to make you cry, and I'm going to kiss the tears away. Well, fuck. I fell in love right then and there. Nothing else mattered. Whether it's the words that are the stimulation or whether it's a whip stroke, it slams into your neurology, ends up in your brain. Now, it turns out that you were all born with something very special. And that thing is a pituitary gland. And pituitary glands are small, but they are basically warp engines. That's your warp core, fellas. Why? Because every time they experience what most people call pain, I think I want to call body stress, it generates a little hormone called an endorphin. And endorphins are the drugs that we are all addicted to. We are all endorphin junkies, just like we are all adrenaline junkies. And anybody who denies that is playing games with themselves and playing peekaboo with the truth. So, your pituitary gland has inside of it an endorphin pump. Yeah. So, the cue comes, the stimulation comes, the endorphin pump goes, whoa, whoa, what? Got my attention. And it produces endorphins. And endorphins do two very important things. They make us feel wonderful, high, if you will, and they change the way you experience body stress. They move your limits when they exist in sufficient quantity. So, You get the cue, you get the stimulation. Then a two-part process happens called assimilation and recovery. And if the assimilation process, I don't think I need to tell you what assimilation means, your brain absorbs it, it gets it, it drinks it, it eats it, it has it, it feels it. And then it recovers, it restabilizes. You think about a whip stroke. Imagine a bullwhip stroke, and let's graph it here for a moment. Right? It's assimilated and then recovered. You got it? You with me here? Every time that happens, the endorphin pump goes, yep, got my attention, I'm cooking. The person who's running the scene, whether you call him a top, a friend, a dominant, a sadist, a master, a coach, it doesn't matter. But the person who's basically driving the scene and making the decisions about what comes next. If you manage the assimilation and recovery process carefully and wisely, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get another cue, another invitation for more stimulation. Stands to reason. So how you manage the assimilation and recovery process determines how far that scene can go. Most of the people who run scenes that I know want to see how much you can get away with. Because you're all pigs. I am. I'm a pig. I'm absolutely a pig, and I love my pig status because I want more of whatever feels good. And I do that without any apology. I love that. The body I was born with has enormous pleasure capabilities. This pituitary gland thing, this endorphin pump that I'm talking about, God damn, what a fucking gift. Phew. What a gift. And you can influence how it behaves. And indeed, if you want to get more out of it, you know, bottoms will come to you and say, you know, I'd like something that pushes my limits out. Right? Well, what do they mean? It means that they want to have an experience that exceeds their previous experience. They want more. Why do they want more? Because they're pigs too. God, I love it. I love being. I used to say, I love being a pervert. I can't say that anymore because that word has come to be stolen now for some other meaning, which I really hate. Twisted. Yeah, I like to be twisted. I do that. I feel it's a gift. When I say that in front of big audiences, people say, I say, what, you want to be common? No, I don't think so. Nobody wants to be common. We all want to be special because we all are, you know. We have this magic stuff happening inside of us that is nearly unlimited capability. You doubt me? We walked on the moon. Shut up. Yeah, I'm going to take a breath there for a minute because that stuff is so exciting to talk about, I can't even see straight. Dominants, tops, sadists want to see what we can get away with. Why? Because we're predators. It's okay to be a predator. Predators exist in nature. It's okay to be prey. The relationship between predators and prey is very interesting. Imagine, if you will, a pride of lions in the Serengeti Plain, up on a hill, and they have just gorged themselves. They are busy licking blood off their paws and so forth. They are packed full. They couldn't move if they wanted to. And in the distance, these 3 zebra appear and start walking. And you can bet that the lions go, whoop. They can't help it. It's their nature. The nature of predatoriness is in us. The nature of preyness is in us. You get to decide which of those you're going to use to run your starship. Because one's not better than the other. It's whichever one you feel the most confident about managing. God, look at all these hungry faces looking at me. God damn. Is this making sense to you? I mean, are you guys with me? If you want more out of the bottoms that you play with, you're going to have to get better at managing the assimilation and recovery process. And good news, I'm here to tell you how to do that. I'm going to give you some of the tools that you need to do that better. Here's some elements and issues that shape the way the assimilation process goes. First of all, better hit that space bar right now. Wake the fuck up. The players themselves. Are you strangers to one another? If I'm in a scene with somebody I've never played with before, and things don't work out very well, I get to say, gee, I'm glad we tried this. It was fun to meet you. And yeah, good luck to us both. But if I'm in a scene with somebody I'm in a relationship with and it goes south, my laundry doesn't get done. So the relationship between the players really matters. Because you got more skin in the game, right? As they say. Are they acquainted with one another? Are they in a relationship with each other now? Were they before? Is this the first time they've ever danced together? Or is this their 4th time at the fair? At the unfair? Have they ever watched each other in public spaces play with other people before they made their approach? It's one of the virtues of going to big dungeon parties. You get to watch how people run their scenes. Next time you're at a public dungeon space and you think you see somebody who might know something about this magic, pull up a chair 20 feet away, settle yourself, and watch every move they make. Because there's spell casting going on there. So the relationship between the players matters. The health situation of both of them matters a great deal. If I'm going to play with you, I need to know that your right knee is dodgy, because that's going to make a difference in what kind of bondage I think about doing, or whether I'm going to stand you up or lay you down to play with you. Are you diabetic? When was the last time you checked your blood sugar? If you want to manage a Starship Enterprise instead of, just get off for the afternoon. If you want a larger experience with your sexuality, then you have to be willing to take it more seriously. A lot of people, when they get horny, they want to connect with somebody, get off, and go home. I have never been that guy. I have always wanted sexuality to leave me changed after it was over. Now I'm weird that way, and I cop to that. Transformation is my big fetish. I don't want to be the same guy that I was 5 years ago. I don't want to be the same guy that I was 5 months ago, for that matter. What kind of information do I need about your body if I am going to play with you, wake your endorphin pump up, and exploit the hell out of it? What do I need to know? You know your body better than anybody else. Give me the information that I need to not screw up and to make magic. And people who can't or won't share the truth aren't ready for the big ride. It's okay. Maybe they will be someday. But don't try to make something out of raw material if it's not there. Everybody has mood killers of one kind or another. I consider those landmines. If you're busy trying to cultivate the endorphin pump and exploit the hell out of it, and you all of a sudden tell me, I really don't like my face slapped because my grandmother did that, and blah, 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 blah. I don't even have to finish that paragraph. My grandmother was a sadistic bitch. She used to put me in her lap when I was a little kid, and she'd put this part of my hand in her mouth like this, and she'd bite the hell out of it, make me cry and scream. I'd have to pull my arm out of her mouth. Grandma, why do you bite me so much? And her answer, because I love you so much. Yeah, well, you know how I got twisted. But don't bite me. Fuck no. Spitting, some people think that's really hot. Other people, it's a deal breaker. Humiliation is a thing that can be a huge turn on for people. Humiliation is one of the more risky kinds of scenes, or one of the more risky elements that can be in a scene, which, if not managed properly, remember, powerful, creative, destructive. Any of these things can be what the military would call a force multiplier, okay? But they can also be a force subtractor too. There are verbal no-nos. Baby talk. All of a sudden, dominant starts handing me baby talk. If he has managed to regress me to the point where I am now 8 years old during the scene, then he can talk to me like I'm an 8-year-old, and that'll be okay. But otherwise, it's like, what? Yeah, there's such a thing, such a creature, as what I have come to call the grin and bear it bottom. This is the bottom who believes that what he has to do is just take it and fight his way through the sensation, whatever it is. I don't find those people good teammates for this kind of stuff. Because for me, God, for me, this stuff is a team sport. We can't do it by ourselves. I mean, yes, there are people who play with themselves at home, but there are limits to what you can accomplish that way. It's a team sport. A lot of dominant men and a lot of guys that are master wired have a hard time with that. And if they give me too much pushback, as recently happened, I always say, well, you know, you can always suck your own dick, and walk away. Anyway, grin and bear it bottoms, who withhold physical honesty as they play. Your body is well wired. It knows how to react to whatever stimulation is coming your way. Release the Kraken. Let your body be honest with whatever's going on. You have nothing to lose. The thing about radical sexuality as we practice it, there's no place for anybody to hide anyway. We all stand revealed to one another. The vulnerability amplifies the connection. Vulnerability, powerful, creative, destructive. There are lots of dominant men, tops, who fear being transparent with their own vulnerability because they see it as weakness of some kind. Well, I got news for everybody. Generally, dominant psychologies are far more brittle than sub-psychologies are. The mythology and the pornography would have us believe otherwise. That the top is Tom of Finland, cardboard cutout caricature of indestructibility. Bullshit. Bottoms, subs, slaves must, almost by definition, be prepared to deal with whatever comes our way without warning and be a good wingman and follow where we're being led to see if it works. We have to be flexible that way. So dominance, generally, as a group, more brittle. More brittle, therefore, easy to destroy with a word. Subs have to treat dominance with kid gloves until they find out whether or not the dominant has embraced his own vulnerability and is okay with it or not. Because after all, that's just about embracing your own humanity, isn't it? Vulnerability, powerful, creative, destructive. Do we need a safe word? I don't play with safe words. I haven't for years. If you're watching somebody who's physically honest with their responses to the stimulation, then you know when you need to hold back. You know when you need to change the delivery speed of what you're doing. If you need a safe word under those circumstances, then what you really need is observation lessons so that you're sensitive and well attuned so that you know what you're looking at. And I remember I was playing with a guy in Atlanta whose goal was to be cut open by a bullwhip. And once upon a time, was fairly well known for my bullwhip skills. And noises started to come out of him that I did not recognize. So I went up to him, put my hands. That's a sound that is new to me. Tell me what that sound means. If you don't know, don't guess. Ask, and you shall receive. We go together, or we don't go. It's a team sport. Other elements that influence how assimilation and recovery goes. The environment is really important, far more important than you might think. Is this the first time you were in that environment with this person? Is this your environment? Are you in charge of it? Had either player have a history in that room? And if so, you better find out what that is. Was it good experiences or bad ones in that room? Because if you have a bad experience in a scene, in a room, you're going to walk in there and the vibes are going to be hanging around from the previous time. The ambiance of the room. I got news for you. Blue light makes people look dead. Please, no blue lights in play spaces. More news. Green lights make people look sick. No green lights in dungeon spaces, please. What you want is flesh-colored lighting. Temperature. Oh, God, I thought I was in love with a guy. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and this physical god wanted me and decided he was going to move me to Michigan to be his toy. And so he flew me to Michigan, 55-acre farm, old house, basement, cold. Winter, Michigan, cold. He had been pissing into a bucket for the week long. And so he got me tied up in his basement. And his first move was to take a bucket of cold piss and throw it at me. That was his first move. It was also his last move. Because all of a sudden, I turned into a quivering, shivering mass of useless. Temperature of the room that you're in really matters quite a bit. Quite often when people are playing and getting closer to one another and getting connected, and the connection is getting deeper and more intimate, we'll start to sweat. As the endorphin pump builds up, people will often start to sweat. And when you see that, you need to respond to it in one way or another. Music. Some people really like to have music playing in their play space. Please do not include music that has lyrics of any kind in the music. Why not? Because when the brain hears lyrics, even if it's a foreign language, it doesn't matter. All of a sudden, that's a distraction from the endorphin pump management. No lyrics. It's confusing to what your real agenda is. If you're going to use a whip, you don't really want music that has a beat because you don't want the beat to take charge of your rhythm. Because that can happen without you even noticing it. forgetting something. Yeah, music. Let's go back there for a second. If you have to have music, don't make it so loud that it's hard to communicate. Generally, when I'm looking at a piece of porn that otherwise looks really hot and there's music, for some reason, old vintage porn, they all felt like they had to have music of some kind on, and I just want to slap them. Because it's about the connection. And anything that challenges that or gets in the way of that is not going to enable your starship to go where you need it to go. There's another thing about the scale of stimulation, the intensity scale. If I've got somebody up on a St. Andrew's cross and I want to start the scene, I can walk up to them and the first stroke, just blowing on his back, is enough to wake up his endorphin pump. Sometimes you can do more with less. And it's fun to find out how much you can do with how little you use. As the intensity of your stimulation goes up, it takes more time for the assimilation recovery process to do it, right? If the intensity goes way up at the same rate, it's going to overwhelm the assimilation recovery process, and the bottom's going to start to freak out. So as the intensity goes up, you want the spaces between the stimulation to lengthen, to give him time to assimilate and recover. Oh, that's what I forgot. I want you to count these strokes, boy. That's a guaranteed interruption for endorphin pump management. Because the part of him that has to keep track of counting, I mean, think about that now through the lens of what I've just been describing. Count these strokes, boy. Because you saw it in porn, and the person who used to play with you did it that way, doesn't mean it's useful. It's not, it's obstructive. Now, maybe your intention, maybe your goal in the scene is to torment the fuck out of him so that he can't focus. Because that's a reasonable goal for scenes. But that goal takes you to those destinations, not these destinations. So you have to figure out what your intention is. What do you want to do with this person tonight? Do you want to develop their capabilities for managing body stress? 2001, I was at a big dungeon party in Palm Springs. There was one guy there I wanted to play with. I, brought my complement of gear. I was dressed on the left, badass, sadistic top motherfucker. There was one guy there I wanted to play with. He was this muscle dude, and he had these 6 little boys following him around wherever he went. And I thought, damn, missed that. On the last night, we ran into each other in the dungeon. And I spoke to him. I said, things are going well? He said, Mr. Baldwin, they'd be going a lot better if I were on the receiving end of your bullwhip. What? I said, really? He said, yeah, there are only 2 men in the country I'd give it up for, and you're one of them. I said, well, that's very flattering, but is that an offer? He said, yes, indeed, it is an offer. And I said, let's go over here and talk about that. So we went over to this side of the dungeon, which was in a big ballroom. This was at the Riviera Club in Palm Springs. And, or at least, I don't know what it's called now, but it's, as you drive in, it's on the left. And so we went over to the side of the ballroom, and I'm leaning against the wall, and I got my hand on his shoulder, and the boys knew to stay about 12 feet away. His back was to the room. You know, little things, little moves can speak volumes. I said, so what do you want? He said, well, I want to become indestructible on the receiving end of a bullwhip. Does that project interest you? I said, yes, as a matter of fact, it does interest me. He said, have you ever done it? I said, no. He said, do you know how you would go about it? I said, I do. I know exactly how I'd go about it. I said, we'd start with a scene here tonight, and then we'd debrief it, and if we were both happy with the outcome, we'd plan scene number 2, and we'd continue until we got to your goal, or until one of us got bored. It took 14 months. Graduation for him was at Inferno. Anyway, sorry, I got lost in a reverie. That's a problem you get when you talk to old people. As the intensity goes up, you reach the threshold of tolerability. That level of intensity beyond which the bottom can't manage by themselves. Past that point, if you're going to go past that point, you better have bondage. And it better be good bondage. Because past that point, all of a sudden, your bottom becomes involuntary. He loses control over his body, including his voice. And at that moment, he becomes a danger to himself, and he becomes a danger to you. So you better, if you're going to move him past the threshold of tolerability into the land of involuntary behavior, you better make sure that both of you are safe. And if you don't know how to do that, get some instruction, for God's sake. Past involuntary reactions, including vocal, by the way, lives the land of agony. And what happens in agony is you cease to exist. All of your identities fall away. You are no longer he who is male, he who is American, he who is white or black or brown or old or young or Italian. All of those identities vanish immediately. And there is no past, there is no future. There isn't even a present. There is only the consumption of sensation. Typically, your sensoria will fail. Your hearing will change, your vision will change. Sometimes you'll lose control over your bowels or your bladder. Navigation at light speed requires a different skill set and a different set of awarenesses. and a different set of realities. All right, I have wasted your time now for a little over an hour. Let's take a break and go drink and disport yourselves. And we'll do Q&A for what you've just heard in a few minutes when you come back. Off you go.
Okay.
Stretch your legs.
Take about 10 minutes.
No, you can have it. What? Okay, thanks.
here for this meeting? All right. Here's the meeting. How do you know this trash? What trash is it? Crazy. Yes. Yes. Maybe somewhere between 5 and 10 years old. So this one. Are you still? Yeah, that's all. Oh, you are? I thought you were done. Do you do any MPR? Can I refer you? Or would you? settle.
Okay, so you all had a good break. We've all had a great time so far. Questions in this segment will be at this microphone, please, so that everyone can hear it while we're streaming. And talk about what we'd like to limit questions at this point to the material that you've taught, that you've already seen. So,
All right.
back to you.
One of the things that all old people fear is that we will die before we have had the chance to share what we have learned. And that our knowledge and our experience will go away when we do. This is a thing that all old people fear, whether they cop to it or not. So, if you came in here with questions about what we've been talking about and do not ask them, then you waste me. And I have worked hard to become the resource that I am. So to waste me would be a bit of a sacrilege. I know you're all sinners, but not that way. There is no such thing as a stupid question. I just ran a lot of stuff past you. Sometimes new knowledge is slippery. And sometimes I don't make any sense. So if there are confusing thoughts in your head about what you've heard me say today, let's straighten that out now.
Hi, I want to ask you if you've done much play with people who are classified as neurodivergent or even autistic, and how that, based on the presentation you just gave, how that affects how you measure their responses to stimulus.
The correct answer, which is the honest answer, is I don't know. Because asking about autism, when I was a freshly minted therapist, I looked at everybody through the diagnostic lens, because it was like my new toy, as it is for many new therapists. But I don't do that anymore, and I haven't done that for a long time. If you want me to look at you through that kind of a lens, you're going to have to pay me for that skill. So generally, when I ask about a person's health, I don't ask about their mental health. By the time we're having any conversation, I've usually made a decision that I am probably not dealing with any kind of gross psychopathology. Now, I happen to believe that all gay men are trauma survivors. And I think that anybody who is outside the box is, by definition, a trauma survivor to one degree or another. But, trauma doesn't always manifest itself as on the spectrum, so I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to think about your question. I don't want to think about your question, but now I don't have a choice.
Glad to help.
Hi.
Hi. A few times you've touched on humiliation.
On what?
Humiliation.
Yes.
And so, but you've sort of skirted by it mostly. There's a good side and a bad side, a wrong way or right way to do that. So I wonder if you'd say more about that.
Well, sometimes people import elements into their erotic lives in the hopes that they'll have some kind of a therapeutic experience around it. Many of us grew up with humiliation of one kind or another. And in adulthood, people will often try to recreate the emotional circumstances of our youth in the hopes that now we can get it to come out differently. In the therapeutic world, that's known as undoing. Kink of all kinds is sometimes therapeutic, but that does not make it therapy. Humiliation. You throw a question like that at me, and what immediately happens is that the film rolls in my head start to go. And I'm guessing that some of you have been in a place in San Francisco called a powerhouse. Yes? Raise your hands. Oh, yes. Well, back when the earth was cooling, it was called the No Name Bar. And the guy who used to run it was a fellow named Ron Johnson, who was one of the founders of the Rainbow Motorcycle Club. And he and I were having a torrid affair when I lived up there. And I was a young kinkling. And Ron decided that he wanted to humiliate me. And so, you know the bathroom that's up the stairs, just to the right? He took me up there and knelt me down in front of the commode, put my hands behind it, handcuffed them with my head down in the commode, and left me there for a couple hours. And I looked around on the inside of the bowl, and I did not hear that sound. I looked around on the inside of the bowl. I have quite an unusual collection of spiritual tools needed for navigation at light speed. And I realized that nothing in that bowl was going to hurt me. And guys would come up and they'd piss on the back of my head, and it was like, oh God, this is boring. When is this going to be over? And there was nothing sexy about it. And pretty soon Ron came up and was all set to find me completely broken down and humiliated. And he was rather disappointed to discover that his humiliation effort was completely lost on me. That was the end of our affair, actually. Because he was trying to hurt me with it. And his effort was a sincere effort to wound me in some way, emotionally, to make me less than I was. Who I am is not that vulnerable. I'm plenty vulnerable, but not in those ways. Humiliation, powerful, creative, destructive. There are individuals who want to use the BDSM scene to engage in self-harm. And I'm a great believer in self-determination. I think it's the bedrock of freedom and democracy. And all other things being equal, including psychological health, you are free to do what you wish with your sexuality. It belongs to you. Your body belongs to you. You can decorate it. You can change it because it belongs to you. And that includes your psychology. If you want to be on the receiving end of humiliation as a way of strengthening your identity with yourself. You can do that way if you want. There are other ways to do it too that I think are more efficient, but that doesn't matter because it's not about efficiency, is it? It's about making your dick hard. I don't think I have more to say about that. I'm sorry, you can't do this. What?
But you might have more to say about that because it's a perfect lead-in, and I know you and I have a lot of conversations about it, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak about it here, but tapping into the humiliation and going into this more modern trend of fin-doming and financial domination.
Ah, yes.
And what are your thoughts on it?
Well, you know, as a therapist, I had heard about financial domination for years and didn't really understand it, didn't really know what it was about. But, you know, if you live long enough, life will often hand you an opportunity to have every experience that you need to have. And so it wasn't very long until I met a guy online who I think is the sexiest piece of male flesh I have ever encountered in my fucking life. I mean, this is a guy who, when I look at him, it's like all of my bones turn to jello. And I become helpless in his presence in a more profound way than I had ever experienced before, really. And the first night we met, he was on Chatterbait. I don't know how many of you know about Chatterbait. And he's a model on Chatterbait. And I said, I'd like to visit with you. Can you bail out of that? And he said, no, this is how I support myself. And I said, well, what if I sent you some money so that, yeah. And he said, well, that would work. And I said, well, what would 30 minutes cost me? He said, well, in 30 minutes, I'd probably make $150. I said, okay, how can I do that? And I sent him $150. And when I did, my dick got hard. It was like, what? What? Because it hurt. And so as all this is going on, I'm like watching myself go through this new set of experiences. And I'm thinking, you know, you are not a rich man, dude. Where is this going? Let me just say that it went much farther than I ever would have imagined. And the few friends of mine who know about it were really scared for me. And I didn't care. Happy?
But perhaps you can combine that with the humiliation and the power of that. And
I didn't find it humiliating because I was his slave.
because some do.
And still am, I might add. And he loves hurting me. It's the only way he can think of to hurt me. Although lately, I planted another seed in his mind about another way that he could do that using his phone. I don't think I have to explain that, do I? I think he's trying to wrap his head around it. But I got him to admit recently that he's been doing this as his sole support since he was 19 years old. I'm the only person he's has a three-dimensional relationship with in all that time. because he can't get into me without me also getting into him. And I am into him deep because I have spoiled him tremendously, not just with money. Well, you know, there are relationships that cost people a lot more than that. So it's not like I have 6 kids in graduate school that I have to pay for. And I don't have to buy anybody's orthodontia, except my own maybe. And money doesn't mean anything to me anyway. All I care about is whether or not I have enough to meet my own needs. I've never been a person who acquired stuff. You know, I have an old car, it's paid for. My clothes aren't fancy. Nothing about me is fancy, except what goes on behind my eyes. That's about it. Next question. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I can understand with the pituitary, training the pituitary gland through whether it's just a slight breath or heavier impact play. I'm not somebody who gets turned on, or at least not yet, by heavy impact or body stress. But just a breath or something light can do that. So I feel like I'm missing out, or I'm not able to access what some people are able to experience through heavier body stress, and I'm wondering if there's a way for me to access that, if it's just not possible.
Yeah, sure.
Is it possible to access it, you mean?
Yeah, the activity that I think most people are most accessible to is spanking, if I had to guess. Because spanking is a thing that we're aware of from childhood. One of the things that I forgot to mention about managing the assimilation recovery process, if you wake the endorphin pump up on somebody's back, for example, don't be switching around the target. Because if you are working to cultivate the endorphin pump by the way that you're spanking somebody's ass or whatever, then don't add nipple clamps. Because that's a completely different set of neurology. And you don't want to confuse the little endorphin pump. It's very simple. Keep it simple. Keep it straight ahead until the person is so flooded with endorphins that it doesn't matter what you do with them. They become nearly indestructible. The guy who had the goal of becoming indestructible on the receiving end of a bullwhip, he became indestructible on the receiving end of a bullwhip. At Inferno, I whipped him with a bullwhip as hard as I could, as fast as I could, as long as I could, every night for 5 nights. No bondage. Barely made a sound. Because I had taught him how to become transparent, so that the energy moved through him the way that sunlight moves through a pane of glass and warms it up. Isn't that a beautiful, poetic image? I love that. Because when you're on the receiving end of stimulation, you don't hang on to it, but let it pass through you. How many Dune fans are in the room? The Bene Gesserit Litany Against Fear. Page 8. Frank Herbert, 1965. When you masturbate, do you turn it into a Wagnerian production, or is it just let's get off and go to bed?
sometimes it's like that. Sometimes I take my time with it.
Well, if you take your time with it, investigate your body. With a feather.
Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty inspired, guy. Yeah, with a feather. That's fine. Any kind of a feather, it doesn't matter. Any feather will do. Barring that, a wooden kitchen spatula. Tap, 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 tap. You can wake your own endorphin pump up, you know.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Huh?
I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm telling you, you
No,
can.
no.
I promise you, you can. It was my intention to bring one of my most deadly cats of nine tails with me today, but I forgot to. I was going to stand up here and I was going to do it for myself in front of you. Because once you know how the pump works, and once you have a relationship with it, you have access to it in less than a minute. I mean, I could stand here and whip myself. Does anybody have a flogger in the room? I'm shocked. I'm shocked. There's gambling going on in this establishment. Anyway.
I have one in my car.
Do you?
Yeah, we heard that now all over, yeah.
Yum, yum. Man, you're going to get me high now. He's got one in his car. He's got one in his car. Have gun, have flogger, will travel. Anyway, yeah, it's your pituitary gland. You can develop a relationship with it. And then after you've done that, you can take it out on the road to share it with other people and see if they can teach you more about it than you can teach yourself.
Okay. I have a place to start now. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love it. He went out to get a flogger. Is that hot or what? I guess I now have to put up or shut up, don't I? You know, Betty Davis was right. Aging is not for sissies. It was very confusing when I first heard that because I was a sissy and I couldn't figure out exactly what that meant. Feels good to stand up a little bit. Anybody else? No? Golly, I must have been really clear. You don't get any questions, what? What, Jason? Okay, yeah.
When you're talking about stimulus and recovery, getting the endorphins going, I have a question on that because I'm a master at autoeroticism, spending many years of avoiding disease. I find that when I'm doing things like, what are those things, tit stimulators,
Nipple clamps.
no, the electric ones,
Okay,
TENS units.
okay.
When it's slow impulses, it's like counting. It stays left brain.
I'll take this one.
It stays left brain for me. Only when it gets to the where it's a constant is it really stimulating the endorphins for me. So where is the recovery in that?
It's an almost instantaneous process for you at this point. because you've trained it so well over such a long period of time that
All right.
the recovery is like nanoseconds behind the assimilation.
Because any you know, any just sharp crack of anything, just maybe it's because I'm ADD, but that just takes my attention to wherever it is rather than staying
Yeah,
in the
that's why you don't want to confuse your neurology, your brain chemistry, with too many different kinds of sensation. I mean, you know.
Okay.
Deerskin, right? No, this is buffalo?
I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, this is not heavy enough to reach me. Sorry. I should have brought my own, but I appreciate the thought. Yeah, I can't. No, you won't. Thank you. Sorry.
Nobody has a heavier one?
What?
No one has a heavier one in their car?
Yeah, well, you know, I just forgot. I was in a hurry, and anyway, maybe next time. But when I'm, what is that song from? She sung, Julie Andrews sung it on a hill. What? Yes, that's it. When I'm feeling low. And I really need to change my brain chemistry. I know how to do that. Because that's, after you've learned how to navigate at light speed for a while, it becomes really easy to take charge of your own brain chemistry and flood it with pretty much whatever you need and want. So not everybody wants to travel at warp speed because it requires a different skill set. But, you know, I'm a pioneer. And I like to go where no one's gone before. I really said it, didn't I? I'm sorry, I apologize. Well, are we done? I mean, is that it?
You mentioned the Bene Gesserit, something about fear, but you didn't say it to the people that are not doing phonetics.
Fear is the enemy. It is the mind killer. It is the little death that brings total annihilation. I will face my fear, let it pass in me and through me. And when it has gone past, I shall turn my eye upon it, and there will be nothing. Only I shall remain. Fear is the enemy. Fear is the mind killer. It is the little death that brings total annihilation. I will face my fear, let it pass in me and through me. And when it has gone past, I shall turn my eye upon it, and there will be nothing. Only I shall remain. Because fear is the mind killer. When you are scared, nothing works. Everything freezes up. And the Bene Gesserit, the people who use this litany against fear, refuse to be disabled by it. Now that's an interesting decision that they made, because they have extraordinary gifts. Frank Herbert, in that novel, Dune, was the first person that really woke me up to the possibility that humans can have abilities that we don't even know about. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's 11 o'clock at night, or 11:30, and you decide that you need something from a 7-Eleven store. So what do? You get in your car, and you drive to the 7-Eleven, and you pull into the parking lot. And as you pull into the parking lot, you scan it to find out whether or not there's any reason that you should not be pulling into the parking lot, right? We all do this without anybody having trained us to do that. We do that because you all have a scanner. I'm ruling out that you have some gross psychopathology or a tumor on your brain that prevents you from using these abilities. So ruling those options out, you check it out. You do this automatically. Before you get out of your car, you do it again. You walk up to the door. You look through the windows. You scan it again. You don't think about this. It's automatic. You walk in. You check out the space again. You scan it. Is it okay to be here or not? If it's not, you turn your ass around and you leave, right? Because you get a feeling that it's unwise to be there. You walk up to the counter, you pick up your donut or whatever you're there to get. The guy or woman behind the counter walks up. You do another quick scan. Is this a person I can be friendly with? Is this a person that I can improve their day by a comment I might make? Can I be playful with this person? Or is this person over it? And so your scanner detects the output of that individual. Now, I know this sounds like California woo-woo, but we are in California woo-woo. And so we get to do that shit, right? There's an example of a skill that nobody ever taught you. We have a word for it, we have a phrase for it. Sort of street smart is as close as we get to that, right? But it's much larger than that. If you close your eyes right now, you can scan this room and you can feel concentrations here, there, other places. There's a very loud one in front of you up here talking now. And that's okay, because I'm not dangerous. Oh, yes, I am. I'm unbelievably dangerous. Nobody thinks about that stuff. And that's just a very basic capability. The Bene Gesserit developed all kinds of capabilities. They're the sisterhood that use that litany against fear because they don't want to be paralyzed and disabled because they have lots of able in them. All of that led me to take linguistics as a course of study in undergrad school. I studied language because the Bene Gesserit used something called, let's hear it, the voice. And I had vocal coaching because I wanted to see what my voice could learn to do. And as a therapeutic weapon against illness, that's what it is. And you can tell by the way that I use my voice that it's a powerful tool that I've developed over many years. There's no reason that you can't have that tool. I don't own any of these tools. I'm just borrowing them for a while. I don't own anything. We are all just, in my opinion, temporary custodians of everything that we have, including our bodies. It's nice because I don't have to be acquisitive. I don't have to collect shit, you know? this beautiful thing that I was able to give to Tom. God, it felt really good to give that to you today. It's your turn to be its custodian. That's fun. I'm glad you have it. Who's next? What time is it? 4 o'clock.
So you mentioned,
Rodrigo, let's hear it.
you started off the presentation talking about not confusing confidence and aggression. You also then later mentioned the brittleness of top psychology. You've now talking about fear and how that can be incredibly debilitating and toxic for your psychology. In trying to be a top, in trying to be a dom, in trying to learn all of these skills, how does one develop the internal sense of confidence that doesn't turn into bombastic aggression or something sort of overstated and empty, but also how do you kill the fear? How do you become a dom that isn't debilitated by their own fear? How do you get that confidence? What skills do you use?
When I was younger, junior high, I think, maybe. One day I realized that I had become, and please, for those of you who be offended by the word I'm going to use now, deal with it. That I had become fear's bitch. And that I had lost any respect I had for myself. Because I had become nothing but fearful. And as I became conscious of that, it pissed me off. It made me really angry. And I decided then that from then on, whenever I felt fear, I was going to force myself to move toward it, not away from it. And I didn't care if it destroyed me. It's like, you're going to destroy me? Have your way with me, if you will. And you know what? As I moved toward it, my own confidence in my survivability grew. I realized that I was still very destructible because confidence is not the same as indestructibility at all. Confidence is about knowing what you can do. What is the serenity prayer? God, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. You have abilities. I don't know what yours are, but you have some. You probably know what most of them are by now. How old are you?
38.
Okay. You got a good bead on your abilities, what you can do. You know how smart you are. You know how stupid you are. Okay. Stay inside your skill set. Reach out when it feels right. Eventually, what will happen is you're going to make a bunch of little decisions in life. They're going to turn out mostly really well. At some point, you're going to realize that you don't have to stop and think about stuff in that department, that you can behave automatically because your experience has allowed you to become accomplished inside that. You already know what you are accomplished at. You just never stop to think of it. In that ballpark, be confident, you already are. This is probably a good time for me to talk about what I've discovered about the future. I finally figured out what the hell it is. The future is a huge, big bag of possibilities. The way I envision it is this big, clear plastic bag, enormous, and inside of it are all these possibilities written on little pieces of paper, swirling around. One of the possibilities that's swirling around in the future right now, in our future right now, is that there's an airplane about to fall out of the sky and destroy this building. That's a possibility that's in that bag floating around. It is. There's a possibility that the power could fail here in the next 3 seconds. There's a possibility that an 8.2 earthquake magnitude could level this building and probably kill most of us right now. These are all possibilities that are swirling around. But the one that isn't swirling around popped out, and it's this, the present. The future is only revealed in the present. This was our future, collective future. We didn't know it. We had plans to be here. Plans are important. Plans give our lives direction and meaning. And of course, when we have plans, we have an outcome that we have in mind, right? The plan that you had was to be here today, and the outcome was getting here and being here, right? But 50 million things could have intervened in that plan and prevented any one of us from being here, myself included, right? So don't let yourself get attached to outcome. Most of our plans actually unfold exactly the way we imagine them. Think about that. Most of our plans really do come to pass precisely the way that we conceive them. It's amazing. But every now and then, something slaps us across the face and says, no plan. That outcome, you need to let go of that because something else is going to go down right now. So you have to release your grip on that outcome and do so effortlessly, maybe even lovingly, and pivot to whatever else is possible at that moment that you can see. That will be a substitute. You can always tell how attached you are to an outcome by how disappointed you are when it doesn't happen. Your disappointment, whenever you feel it, is what lets you know that you were really invested in that outcome. So that's what I've learned about the future. The past has been lived time. The future is unknown and unknowable equally for all of us. Well, maybe there are a few people who have some psychic capabilities, but that's a whole nother conversation that I don't want to distract us with right now. But by and large, the future is equally unknown and unknowable. And, you know, the minute you accept that reality, wow, what a relief. My God, you don't have to sweat the future anymore. You get to live fully in the now, which is where life really happens. It's the only place life happens. The beauty of that awareness for me has been unbelievable liberation. I can't manage the future. I tried for a while and it made me crazy. But I can manage the present really pretty damn well. I'm happy with the way I do it. Maybe the skills and the strength I acquired when I was trying to manage my future now make me really powerful in the now and in the present. What do you think? Tell me that's not liberating, just to entertain the idea. Fuck, I mean, don't have to think about the future anymore. Plans? Yes, nice, plans are nice. Otherwise, we're just aimless. So let's see, what is today, Saturday? Yeah, plans, 4 o'clock. Plans, what do I want later? Well, I want food eventually. I'm going to end up getting tired of this crew because I've given you all that I think I have to give today, pretty much, unless there's some other question that brings me back to life and turns me on enough to hold forth some more. Is any of this making any sense to people? I got to tell you, as soon as I figured out what the future was, whew, man, just this big bag of swirling possibilities.
I don't know if it's a question, but it's kind of a comment. I mean, what you're talking about.
Yeah, closer to the...
Well, a lot of what you're talking about is just being in the moment and the scene, top and bottom there together, because you're on that journey together and you're not so wedded to the outcomes, both of you. And then you get there and then you're going to go further.
Yes.
So what you're kind of describing and just talking about how you manage life is really also, I think, how my brain works, how you get further in the scene and how you have this what I hope is an amazing experience.
Beginners usually start with what Gail Rubin first called paint by number BDSM. Attach shackle A to wrist B. Do this and say that. Grunt loudly. At that point, da 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 da. It becomes like formulaic stuff, and that's one place to start your education with this stuff. But there's more creativity and spontaneity in the human spirit, and when you marry it to the exploration of your sexuality, Katie, bar the door. Because you are all geniuses erotically. And you are going to waste. You can do better. You can have more fun. And you are all pigs. What the hell are you waiting for? I'm a pig farmer. And I fertilize with pig shit, so there you are. Yeah.
I was thinking of like your difference between like the amount of kink experience that one person might have compared to their leather image and how you might see that play in or out or like your perspective on that because don't know, as somebody who has just explored BDSM to its extent, fisting, rope, like to the extremes, just to learn, just for that endorphin rush, like I very much connected with that aspect of what you were saying.
Well, I see the world of radical sexuality as a bit like a smorgasbord table. And when two people are horny and they have cruised and now they're flirting and they're feeling interested in one another, it's as though they go to the beginning of the buffet table and they pick up a dish and both of them hold the same dish and they go down. Let's do a spoonful of that. Fuck yeah, that looks good. I really dig that before. I've done that before, it feels good. How about a spoonful of this stuff over here? Maybe when I know you better. How about, you create a meal together and you taste it together. Somebody recently said, Mr. Baldwin, can you come up with a fairly simple metaphor for a BDSM scene? And I said, well, I can try. And what I said was, imagine two guys in a car, the dominant, the leader, the top, the sadist, the master, whoever, is sitting under the wheel. The sub sitting in the passenger seat. The engine is running, but the vehicle, the transmission is in neutral. Because most of our lives are lived in neutral because we've got stuff to do. We have life to live, we have bills to pay, we have families to cope with, we have doctor visits, whatever. And when the dominant gets horny, glance over at the sub and sees if the sub is looking receptive. And if so, he'll drop it into drive and start to show scenery of his choosing. Drives around. And watches to see how the sub is responding to it. And if the sub is responding really well to XYZ scenery, then we'll do more of that for sure. And if I want to see what I can get away with, I might turn down a country road and show him something a little bit different. At any point, either one of them can grab the ignition and turn the engine off. But it takes both of them to turn the key back on. You like it? Kind of works, doesn't it? You're a troublemaker, aren't you?
I actually wanted to go back to something you said early on about safe words, because I know you and I share a similar perspective and practice on safe words in our play. But knowing that this is being broadcast, I actually wanted to circle back on it and perhaps redefine safe words, not knowing who's listening here, because safe words, I think, are an incredible tool, especially those are new to the scene, and when you're playing with somebody you don't know. And I think they're incredibly important, right? Somebody who comes to play with me or you or somebody who's well known in the community. Well, and I'm even gonna backtrack what I'm saying there, because I've met a few people who've played with well-known people in this community who don't want to play with safe words, and that was a bad decision for them. So I'm gonna just leave a broadness, and you're welcome to reply on it.
Well, if somebody says, yeah, I want to go under for you, and I like this safe word that I've used before, I won't argue with that, but I'm going to deal with that person such that they probably will never use it. But they still have it, and we both know that they do. My goal, of course, is to get them as close to using the safe word as I can without them really using it as a tool. I wrote articles about safe words in the 90s, and it was, I think, me that suggested the stop signal, you know, red, green, yellow kind of thing. Even beginners know what stoplights are. And my job as a dominant with you as a sub is to create an environment in which you feel safe enough and unsafe enough. Because depending on what kind of a scene it is, remember all those different kinds of scenes that we do? I'm not above becoming an erotic terrorist, but I need to know that you're psychologically durable enough to ride that ride with me. So I'm not going to do that with you if you're a beginner or even an intermediate. But if you're a world-class player, you know, step into the car, baby. And I will show you something past the rings of Saturn. And you know that I can. You have the phone number. I'm tired. We're done. Go home, have fun. Did you get what you wanted?
Yes.
I think so.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for attending today, participating. That's a lot to take home. It's a big gift to spend time with Guy, and it's a big gift to spend time with all of you. So I hope that you'll come back and visit us again. Just housekeeping, next Wednesday is our big-ass gear swap meet. So come back and shop. He'll be here. And then for the Claw Leather Weekend that's coming up, we will once again be in charge of the 4,000 square foot Hercules play space.
You will.
So, yes. We do it big, and then we go home.
Why, Captain Butler, how do you do go on?
Phil D.D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's coming up, and then we have a program in the second Wednesday of November. Contents to be determined. Surprise package, and then we'll go on from there. Okay. You know, I had a question for you. If you're not too dumb.
Well, I don't know. Depends on the question.
Well, it's something you said a lot. You said something a long time ago, maybe almost 10 years ago, and it has stuck with me.
Yeah.
We were at the Tom of Finland house, and there was some very important meeting going on up in there. And you said, and I'm not sure if it was just the mood you were in that day, but it stuck with me. You said, "Our way of sex will die with us." Do you remember that?
No, but I can easily, I don't remember it, but I can easily imagine myself having said that. Okay. And what's your question, Tom?
Well, my question is, as I look at, look at all this work, a mature demographic here. We don't have a lot of like really young new people here.
Yes, we do.
And well, I mean, compared to relatively speaking, yes. I refer to myself too. where do you see the future of this BDSM culture going? Do you think things are going to continue on as they are, or do you see changes afoot and evolutions?
Oh, the correct answer is I don't know, because the future is
Right.
unknown
In
and
the bag going
unknowable.
around.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think a defensible case can be made that older generations came of age in an environment where gay meant third-class citizenship for everyone. And some part of us hated that. Who wants to be third class? And so one possible way to prove that we are as good as, whatever that means, is to enlist in the military. And that's why gay men enlisted countless numbers in World War II as soon as Pearl Harbor happened in 1941. Well, the war revealed to us that we could bleed just as well as our straight counterparts, that we were as cowardly as they and as brave as they, and as capable and incapable as they, no better nor worse than they. And after they were discharged following the war, it changed the way that a whole generation of gay men looked upon ourselves. And that, I believe, fueled the movement toward coming out and living life in a more honest and transparent way. Many of those guys came from the middle part of the United States, down on the farm. Once they were discharged in coastal cities, they could not go home because they had seen too much. And so they stayed in the big coastal cities on both coasts. As gay liberation has succeeded, we can get married now, and we have television and, blah, 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 blah. In spite of the fact that the right wing wants us all to go away, we are not going away. And America knows that. And lots of them are scared. But we don't need to prove ourselves in quite the same numbers that we once upon a time did. And I know that some men put themselves through ordeals in BDSM to prove our manhood to ourselves. And the need to do that, I think, has gone now, has been diminished a great deal. The guys who felt the need to use BDSM in order to prove manhood to ourselves, I think they're proving manhood in other ways now that don't require an ordeal, like getting the shit whipped out of you, spending the weekend eating shit, or whatever it is, The other thing is that I think young gay people, young gay men, have a whole sense of confidence about themselves now that we didn't. And I'm glad for that. It's possible that BDSM and radical sexuality as we've known it no longer serves younger generations, and maybe that's why they're not here. But BDSM is out of the closet now. There are books out there. There's more information available online. Oh my God. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody who was 23 the other day online. He didn't see me from here up, so he had no idea how old I was. or wasn't. And my God, his fluency with kink was startling to me and refreshing in a way, too, because I felt like, well, I'd done my job. I'd helped put info out there. In anthropology, one of the lessons that they teach is that every generation finds a way to manifest itself as it must. And it just does that as its own kind of spontaneous thing. It's part of the miracle of humanity that we do that. Do I miss the old days? I miss being young in the old days. And there's a part of me that wishes I had done a few things differently when I was spry and dangerous. Now I'm not spry and dangerous.
You're just dangerous.
I'm just plenty dangerous, yeah. And the reason I'm dangerous is that my mission in life, and the reason I believe I was born, is to be subversive on Earth, to validate erotic diversity. So, yeah, I'm a dangerous guy, and I like that. The right wing is not as safe as they used to be with me in the world. And they're not as safe as they used to be with you in the world either. I don't know. We'll have to be reincarnated to answer your question, Tom.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much.
I've taught a version of this class, if it's a class, all across the country for many years, but not recently, not in the last 8 or 10 years. And the way I would like to teach this class, by the way, is that instead of a Q&A now, we would sit down together and we would look at clips of BDSM porn that I had selected, and so that I could say, hey guys, what do you see? But I can't do that now, except in my living room. And I'm actually thinking about doing that, by the way. I think it would be good for Avatar to be like Johnny Kinkleseed and to create, you just heard it right here for the first time. Johnny Kinkleseed, I kind of like it, has a nice ring to it. Small groups where you would gather and look at BDSM porn that's available online and say, you know, if I was going to do that, here's how I would do that differently. I had how many of you know about thisvid.com? It's a great porn site, free. I used to make comments on bad BDSM scenes, so much so that they canceled my account. I see this heavy-duty needle play, and I don't see a sharps container. I don't see any betadine. I don't see any gloves. I don't see any safe technique. And I'll bet this guy's balls ended up in the emergency room within 24 hours. I used to write shit like that in comments. Oh, it's not what people want to hear. I actually encouraged this vid to take a bunch of stuff down because it's dangerous. Because too many youngsters, and by youngsters I don't mean young in age, I mean newcomers is really what I mean, see that stuff as training films. It's amazing to me that we have not had more hospitalizations and emergency room visits than we have had. For as much stuff as we do, I mean, I've lost 11 friends in BDSM scenes since I was a teenager. Guys who died in scenes that shouldn't have. That's amazing that it's such a low number when you think about it. Anyway.
Is that speaking to your talent?
What?
It's amazingly small for your talent.
Shut up. Go home, guys.
You heard the